Got a minute? I'm Pete Skirbont, Defense Commissary Agency historian, with a minute of history. In June 1991, the impending eruption of long-dormant volcano Mount Pinatubo in the Philippine Islands forced the evacuation of Clark Air Base to the Navy base at Subic Bay. 2 days later, the mountain erupted and covered Clark with volcanic ash. The eruption continued while Typhoon Yunya arrived, blowing the ash toward Subic Bay and the Navy base at San Miguel. The wet, heavy ash snapped trees and collapsed roofs. Days were dark as night. Transformers shorted out with loud explosions. In the heat and darkness, there were no lights, air conditioning, or running water. Earthquakes, rain, and vicious lightning terrified everyone. Mud flows covered Clark's commissary floors with mud and ash. Facilities and warehouses at Subic and San Miguel were damaged or destroyed. Only the Subic store reopened, and it closed the next year, when economics, political change, and the end of the Cold War compelled the closure of all U.S. bases in the Philippines. With a minute of history, I'm Pete Skirbont, DECA historian.
June 12, 1991. The Philippines. After a series of earthquakes felt around the country, everyone in the Philippines is busy making their lives move forward. Kids go to school, workers go to their workplaces, and it was a normal day for all Filipinos. But under the ground, a volcano is making its deathly move. Mt. Pinatubo, standing at 4,900 feet and located 55 miles north of Manila in the province of Zambales along the Cabosilan Mountains. It is surrounded by 3 key provinces in the region: Zambales, Tarlac, and Pampanga, home to more than 30 million residents. It started in the early months of the year 1991, where initial steam was found around Mt. Pinatubo. Before, the residents believed it was a mountain, but scientists further studied that this is a volcano, a sleeping giant. June of 1992 was the moment when a picture of a giant ash formation hovered around the mountains and areas around it. The scientists had gotten data suggesting that the volcano is getting angrier. Thus, the risk of the volcano erupting is at hand. Prior to and following that day, an evacuation order was called to save the people living close to the volcano's proximity. Some followed, but most others stayed home. Alert Level 4. This was raised by local authorities, stating that eruption is possible within 24 hours. The next morning, the ground shakes and the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century begins. Thousands of tons of sulfuric ash, steam, molten rocks, and other pyroclastic debris were thrown into the atmosphere around the volcano. Everyone is not ready for what's coming next. 47 miles north of Mt. Pinatubo, Typhoon Yunya with a wind speed of 120 miles per hour will hit directly above Mt. Pinatubo, mixing 15 to 30 million cubic meters of sulfuric ash. Evacuation to the safer site is the best way the victims can do. They brought whatever things they could carry. They used plastic bags, casseroles, and everything they could use to cover their heads. It was a total disaster. The death toll is rising. The victims were either burned, suffocated, or worse, buried alive because of the roofs collapsing under the weight of accumulated muddy ash caused by the typhoon. Days after the calamity, lahar, a combination of mud flow with slurry pyroclastic material, rocky debris, and water, clearly plunges into the provinces, burying everything in its path, leaving a death toll of about 900 lives. 364 communities of 2.1 million people were displaced because of the eruption, destroying housing and livelihood. In the years 1991 and 1992, a total of about 12 billion pesos worth of damage were recorded from the provinces of Zambales, Tarlac, and Pampanga. Amid vast media coverage and the resulting worldwide attention, international aid poured in. Several nations like the United States of America, Germany, Switzerland, and Japan played a significant role in the recovery of the victims. Today, the effects of the different recovery programs initiated by government and non-government organizations still lives in the hearts of Filipinos. Because of this great tragedy, families were lost, businesses were ruined, dreams turned into nightmares, and the future seemed to be bleak and uncertain.
Ay, nakita ko ng anak ko dyan eh.
Permina.
Siyempre naman, nakikita naman ninyong delikado na ang bukid. Tatagal pa kami dito.
Ba't pa kayo bumalik dito?
Siyempre, nagkukuha kami ng aming gamit.
Well, this is typically what we see, people that live in crowded conditions and don't have access to clean water to keep the skin clean and stuff. So that is a common condition that you see when you don't keep the skin clean. But it's easily treatable. One, it's easily preventable, and that's the first thing you would do is prevent it from happening in the first place by getting some clean water down here.
Deposits of various kinds, and it's approximately an order of magnitude, roughly 10 times the size of the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980.
Driven by atmospheric winds, material from Mount Pinatubo circles the globe within weeks. It will remain in the atmosphere for years, filtering out enough sunlight to reduce average global temperatures for more than a full degree for up to 5 years. For the Filipinos, however, there are immediate problems to deal with. Three weeks after the eruption, the number of people displaced by Pinatubo is put at 250,000. 4 months later, 200,000 are still in evacuation centers. Their return home complicated by the problem of volcanic mud flows, or lahars.
The eruption filled the valleys up on the volcano with a very large volume, estimated 4 to 7 cubic kilometers of pyroclastic flow deposits. That's fairly loose ash and pumice fragments that fill the valleys in places, in at least one place, up to more than 200 meters thick, over large areas 30 to 50 meters thick.
And these are very loosely consolidated and hot. Once rained upon, they are easily remobilized as lahar or mud flow. They come down the slope at a rate of about 15 to 20 kilometers, and the density is about equivalent to that of flowing concrete.
Throughout the months following the eruption, Philippine authorities fight a losing battle to keep rivers free of sediment. Once the channels are filled in, every new lahar results in widespread flooding.
The estimates are about 650,000 people lost their jobs, and about 50,000 families have permanently lost their homes. These consist of 10,000 Aitas, which are our cultural minorities, our indigenous people, and about 40,000 lowland families. These lowland families, their places of residences have either been turned into river beds, or they have been covered with 1 meter to 4 meters thick of lahar.
The damage at Clark was so extensive, the Air Force decided not to rebuild the base. Subic Bay was also heavily damaged, but the Navy decided it was too valuable to abandon. Millions were spent to make it operational again. But less than 6 months later, the Philippine Senate refused to renew the Navy's lease, effectively ending America's 100-year military presence in the Philippines. While no one expects another major blast, Mount Pinatubo has not yet gone down for its much-awaited 600-year sleep. Eruptions still happen. Most are quite small, but some have required the evacuation of tens of thousands of Filipinos, and there has been loss of life. Property damage caused by mud flows may continue for a decade. Today, over a year after 1991's climactic eruption, Mount Pinatubo is generally quiet. Its huge new crater and lake serve as a powerful reminder of the violent potential of the natural world. For the scientists who had successfully predicted the eruption and helped save thousands of lives, there was real satisfaction, tinged perhaps with just a touch of melancholy.
It's kind of strange because you know, I'm 33 and I've had this incredible experience, and you got to kind of wonder, okay, well, you know, what do you do for an encore?